beloved chosen one, before you go any further, I want you to pause for just a moment and breathe. Wherever you are right now, whatever room you are sitting in, whatever thoughts have been circling in your mind before you pressed play on this video, I want you to understand something clearly from the very first word. You did not arrive here by accident. Out of every video that could have appeared in front of you today, out of every distraction that could have pulled your attention elsewhere, you are here in this moment because something greater than chance has been arranging the details of your life long before you noticed. This is not a coincidence. This is divine design. There is a reason the title of this message caught your eye. Perhaps you have been feeling watched lately, not in a comfortable way, but in a way that makes your stomach tighten. Perhaps you have felt like people are judging you, measuring you, whispering about you when your back is turned. Perhaps you feel like every mistake you have ever made is being tallied somewhere, like every eye in the room notices your flaws before they notice anything good in you. If that is you, I want you to know that God brought you here today, God's chosen one, because He is about to reveal to you who is truly watching, and the answer will change the way you carry yourself for the rest of your life. You see, there is a strange ache that comes from feeling seen in the wrong way. It is exhausting to feel like all eyes are on you when those eyes feel critical, cold, or indifferent to your pain. Maybe you have walked into a room and felt smaller than you are. Maybe you have sat in silence while others spoke over you, dismissed you, or looked past you as though you were invisible, even while somehow still feeling exposed, as if your every flaw were on display. This tension between feeling invisible and feeling exposed is one of the most confusing burdens a human heart can carry. But today, we are going to trace that tension all the way back to a woman in the wilderness who felt exactly the same thing and who discovered a truth so powerful that her testimony is still spoken thousands of years later. Her name was Hagar. She was a servant, cast aside by the very family she served, sent away into a desert with nothing but a container of water and a child on her hip. She believed no one saw her. She believed no one cared what happened to her out there beneath the merciless sun. And yet, in the loneliest moment of her life, she encountered the eyes of the living God, and she gave Him a name that has echoed through generations ever since: El Roi, the God who sees me. This is the story we are going to walk through together today, and by the end, God's chosen one, I believe you will understand something about your own life that you have never fully grasped before. Because here is the truth beneath the title of this video. All eyes are on you, yes, but not in the way you fear. The eyes of gossip, the eyes of judgment, the eyes of comparison. Those eyes fade in significance the moment you understand whose eyes truly matter. There is a set of eyes that has never once left you. Not for a single second of your existence, not during your lowest failures, not during your hidden shame, not during the nights you cried yourself to sleep, believing no one noticed. Those eyes belong to the one who formed you before you were born, the one who numbered the very hairs on your head, the one who calls you not by your mistakes, but by your original purpose. Consider the words spoken by the prophet in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 5, where the Lord says, "Before I formed you in the womb I knew you, and before you were born I set you apart." This is not poetic language meant only for prophets and kings. This is the same truth spoken over you, God's chosen one. Before your parents ever met, before your name was chosen, before your first breath, the eyes of God were already fixed upon you with intention and purpose. You were not an accident, and you are not being overlooked now. I know it may not feel that way. Perhaps you have applied for the job and heard nothing back. Perhaps you have prayed for a relationship to heal and watched it grow colder instead. Perhaps you have stood in rooms full of people and felt like the only person no one truly sees. This feeling is real, and I do not dismiss it. But feelings, however real, are not always accurate reporters of truth. The feeling of being unseen by man does not mean you are unseen by God. In fact, sometimes the seasons when we feel most invisible to people are the seasons when God is watching most closely, preparing something in secret that will one day be revealed in the open. Awaken with me for a moment, God's chosen one. Awaken to the reality that your life carries weight in eternity, even on days that feel wasted and small. Awaken to the reality that the God who sees the sparrow fall from the sky, as spoken in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 10 verse 29, sees every tear that falls down your face in private. Awaken to the possibility that the very pain you are carrying today, the sense of being watched, judged, or forgotten, might be the doorway into the most important revelation of your life. Today, we are going to walk through the story of Hagar together, not as a distant historical account, but as a mirror held up to your own soul. We are going to look at what it means to be cast out, to feel unseen, and to discover, in the middle of the wilderness, that you were never alone. We are going to explore the spiritual meaning behind this ancient story and how it applies to your circumstances right now. Whether you are waiting for a breakthrough, healing from betrayal, or simply feeling invisible in a world that moves too fast to notice you, we are going to walk through practical signs that will help you recognize God's presence even when it feels hidden. We are going to hear a testimony of someone very much like you, who walked through their own wilderness and discovered the same truth Hagar discovered. And then, we are going to arrive together at the emotional climax of this message, the shocking revelation the title promised you, the truth about exactly who has been watching you all along. So settle in, God's chosen one. Let your shoulders drop, let your breathing slow. Whatever burdens you carried into this video, set them down for the next few minutes and let this message wash over you like water over dry and cracked ground. You were led here for a reason. Someone, somewhere, has been praying a prayer that sounds remarkably like the words you are about to hear. Perhaps that someone is you, even if you never said the words out loud. The eyes that matter most have already found you. Let us begin the journey together, into the wilderness, into the story of a woman who thought she was forgotten, and into the truth that all eyes truly are on you. Now, before we go any deeper into this word, we want to pause for just a moment and speak directly to you as a community. If this message is finding you in exactly the right moment, if you have been feeling the pull to respond to provocations that you now recognize as traps, and if what is being shared here is bringing clarity to a season that has felt more confusing than it should, take a second right now and hit the like button. That single tap is your way of saying yes, this word found me, and it matters. It also helps this message reach the next chosen one who is standing at the same crossroads you are standing at right now. And if you know someone who is on the verge of breaking their silence for all the wrong reasons, someone who is being provoked and does not yet recognize the trap, share this video with them today. You may never fully know what that act of passing on this word will mean for someone else's journey, but God knows. And that kind of seed never returns void. If you are not yet part of this community, we want to personally invite you to subscribe. There are more words coming, more layers of this journey being uncovered, and we do not want you to miss what God sends through this channel next. Subscribing takes one moment and ensures that the next word finds you when you need it most. And for those of you who feel led to support this ministry financially, The link is in the description and in the pinned comment below. If these messages have been a source of genuine strength and clarity in your walk, and if giving is on your heart, that door is open. Every contribution goes directly toward keeping this word flowing to the people who need it. But whether you give or whether you simply stay and receive, you are valued here. You belong here. And we are grateful for every moment you spend in this community. To understand the depth of what happened to Hagar, we have to go back to the very beginning of her story, found in the book of Genesis. Hagar was an Egyptian servant belonging to Sarai, who would later be renamed Sarah, the wife of Abram, who would later be renamed Abraham. Abram and Sarai had received an enormous promise from God that they would become the father and mother of a great nation, that their descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky. Yet year after year passed and Sarai remained without a child. The promise seemed to stretch further away with every birthday, every season, every disappointment. In her desperation, Sarai did something that many of us, if we are honest, have also done in our own way when a promise seems delayed too long. She tried to make the promise happen on her own terms. She gave Hagar to Abram so that Hagar might bear a child on Sarai's behalf, according to the customs of that ancient culture. Hagar conceived, and this is where the story turns painful. Genesis chapter 16 verse 4 tells us that when Hagar knew she had conceived, she began to look upon her mistress with contempt. And in response, Sarai treated Hagar so harshly that Hagar fled from her presence into the wilderness. Picture this for a moment, God's chosen one. Hagar did not choose to be caught in the middle of this situation. She was a servant, without much power over her own circumstances, pulled into a plan that was not originally hers, and then blamed and punished for the tension that plan created. Have you ever felt like that? Caught in the middle of a situation you did not create, and then somehow made to carry the weight of its consequences? Have you ever been misunderstood for simply existing in a position that others placed you in? This is the first layer of Hagar's pain, and it may already resonate with something in your own life. Fleeing into the wilderness alone, pregnant, frightened, and likely uncertain whether she would survive, Hagar reached a spring of water on the road to a place called Shur. It was there, in Genesis chapter 16 verse 7, that the angel of the Lord found her. Notice the wording carefully. The angel of the Lord found her. Hagar was not searching for God in that moment. She was searching for water, for safety, for any place to rest her exhausted body. And yet, in the middle of her flight, in the middle of what felt like abandonment, God found her. The angel asked her a question that carries enormous weight, found in Genesis chapter 16 verse 8, where he says, "Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going?" This question was not asked because God did not know the answer. God asked because he wanted Hagar to speak the truth of her situation out loud, to name her pain, to acknowledge where she stood. Sometimes God asks us questions not because he needs information, but because we need the release of finally speaking our truth aloud to someone who is truly listening. Hagar answered honestly, "I am fleeing from my mistress Sarai," she said, and the angel gave her instructions that might seem difficult to hear at first, telling her to return to her mistress and submit to her. This was not a command to remain in abuse, but rather a promise wrapped inside a difficult instruction. Because the angel continued with an extraordinary promise, telling Hagar that her descendants would be too numerous to count. In the middle of her lowest moment, God gave Hagar a future. Then came the moment that gives this entire story its power. In Genesis chapter 16 verse 13, Hagar responds to this encounter by giving God a name. She called the name of the Lord who spoke to her "You are the God who sees me." She said this because she said to herself, "Have I truly seen the one who sees me?" This is the birthplace of the title El Roi, the God who sees. A well was later named Bir Lahai Roi, meaning the well of the living one who sees me, marking the spot forever as a Yori, place where a woman who felt invisible discovered she had been seen all along. Consider the layers of what Hagar experienced. She was overlooked by her mistress, used as a means to an end, then blamed and mistreated once the plan caused tension she did not create. She fled into a wilderness with no clear destination, likely believing that she and her unborn child would be forgotten by everyone, including whatever god her masters served, since she herself was Egyptian and had no covenant relationship with the God of Abraham. And yet, it was precisely there, at her lowest and most forgotten moment, that God revealed himself not as distant or indifferent, but as intimately aware of her location, her pain, and her future. This pattern repeats again later in Hagar's story. In Genesis chapter 21, after Sarah finally gives birth to Isaac, tension arises again between the two women, and this time, Hagar and her son Ishmael are sent away permanently, out into the wilderness of Beersheba, with only bread and a skin of water. When the water ran out, Hagar placed her child under a bush, unable to bear watching him die of thirst, and she sat at a distance and wept. Genesis chapter 21 verse 17 tells us that God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven, asking her what troubled her and telling her not to be afraid, for God had heard. Then comes a phrase that should stop us in our tracks, found in Genesis chapter 21 verse 19, where it says that God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. The well had been there the entire time. Hagar's eyes had simply not been opened to see it in her panic and grief. How often do we walk through our own wilderness seasons, surrounded by provision we cannot yet perceive, blinded not because the well is absent, but because our eyes have not yet been opened to see what God has already placed nearby. This is the foundational story we will build upon throughout this message, God's chosen one. A woman overlooked by the people closest to her, cast into a wilderness not of her own choosing, convinced that she and her child were forgotten, only to discover twice, in two separate seasons of her life, that the eyes of God had never once left her. The God who sees found her when she fled the first time, and the God who sees opened her eyes to provision the second time. Her story is not simply an ancient account confined to the pages of Genesis. It is a living pattern, and if you have felt overlooked, mistreated, or cast aside in your own life, this pattern is being offered to you today as a mirror and a promise. If what you are hearing today is resonating in a place that feels both personal and urgent, we want you to know that this community exists for exactly this kind of moment. These messages are created with prayer, with intention, and with a genuine belief that God uses every platform available to reach the people He loves. If this message has touched something real in you today, please take a moment to hit the like button as a simple declaration that this word landed in your spirit. And if you know someone who is standing at their own crossroads right now, someone whose hand is hovering over something God has been asking them to release, share this message with them today. Your one act of sharing could be the divine intervention someone else has been praying for. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, we warmly invite you to do that now, so that the next word God has for you does not pass you by. This channel is no longer monetized, but we made a decision from the heart to keep going anyway, because we believe these messages need to keep reaching the right people at the right time. If you feel moved to help us continue this work, you can support the channel through a completely voluntary donation by following the link placed in the description or in the pinned comment below. We are genuinely grateful for every donation, every prayer sent our way, and every share that carries this message further than we could reach alone. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Now that we have walked through the background of Hagar's story, let us turn to the spiritual meaning beneath it, because a story without understanding remains only history, but a story understood becomes revelation. What is God saying through the account of Hagar, and how does it speak directly into your life today, God's chosen one? The first spiritual truth is this: being overlooked by people does not mean being overlooked by God. Hagar's entire crisis began because she was viewed by Sarai and Abram not fully as a person with her own dignity, but as an instrument to fulfill someone else's plan. When she was no longer useful in the way they expected, she became disposable in their eyes. This is a wound many people carry today. Perhaps you have felt used in a relationship, valued only for what you provide rather than for who you are. Perhaps you have felt disposable at a job once you were no longer convenient. Perhaps even within your own family, you have sensed that your worth was measured by your usefulness rather than your simple existence as a person made in the image of God. The spiritual meaning of Hagar's story stands in direct opposition to this wound. While Sarai saw Hagar as a means to an end, God saw Hagar as an end in herself, worthy of personal attention, a personal visitation, and a personal promise. The angel of the Lord did not appear to Sarai in that chapter. He appeared to Hagar, the servant, the outsider, the one everyone else had cast aside. This tells us something profound about the character of God. He is not impressed by social status, birth, order, ethnicity, or usefulness. He moves toward the overlooked with the same intention and detail as he moves toward the prominent. Psalm chapter 139 speaks directly to this truth. In verses 13 through 16, the psalmist writes that God formed his inward parts, knitted him together in his mother's womb, and that his frame was not hidden from God, even when he was being formed in secret. All his days were written in God's book before one of them came to be. If God's attention to detail extends to the secret formation of a person in the womb, long before that person could ever prove their usefulness to anyone, then surely his attention does not shift once that person is grown, misunderstood, or discarded by others. The second spiritual truth found in Hagar's story is that wilderness seasons are often the exact locations where God's presence becomes most vividly clear. It is worth noticing that Hagar did not encounter the angel of the Lord while living comfortably inside Abram's household. She encountered him in the wilderness, at a spring of water, in the middle of her flight and fear. There is something about the stripping away of comfort, status, and control that often opens our eyes to a dimension of God's presence that we could not perceive while surrounded by noise and normalcy. Perhaps this describes your current season, God's chosen one. Perhaps you did not choose the wilderness you are walking through, whether that wilderness looks like a sudden job loss, a broken relationship, a health diagnosis, or a long stretch of waiting without answers. Wilderness seasons are rarely chosen. They are often thrust upon us, the way Hagar's wilderness was thrust upon her by Sarai's harsh treatment. But the spiritual pattern throughout Scripture is consistent. Moses encountered the burning bush in the wilderness. David wrote many of his most intimate psalms while hiding in wilderness caves from Saul. Jesus himself was led into the wilderness before beginning his public ministry, according to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 4, verse 1. The wilderness, though painful, is frequently the very place where the veil between heaven and earth grows thin. The third spiritual truth is perhaps the most important for this particular message, since it speaks directly to the title of this video. All eyes are on you, but the eyes that matter most are not the eyes of judgment, comparison, or gossip. They are the eyes of a covenant-keeping God who names himself, through Hagar's testimony, as El Roi, the God who sees. This name is not simply descriptive, it is relational. Hagar did not name God the one who watches from a distance. She named him the one who sees me, a deeply personal and intimate phrase. This suggests that God's seeing is not passive observation, like a security camera recording footage without care. It is active, compassionate attention, the kind of seeing that leads to action, provision, and rescue. Consider how this reframes the anxious feeling of being watched that so many carry today. In a world saturated with social media, comparison, and constant visibility, many people feel watched in an exhausting, exposing way, worried about how they appear to others, worried about being judged for their choices, their appearance, their failures. This kind of being seen drains the soul. But the being seen that Hagar experienced restored her soul. It gave her a future when she believed she had none. It gave her water in the desert. It gave her son a name, Ishmael, meaning God hears, a companion truth to God sees, reminding us that God's attentiveness includes both his eyes and his ears. There is a fourth layer worth exploring here, and it involves the shock that the title of this message promises. Consider who Hagar was from the perspective of the covenant community around Abram. She was not part of the promise. She was Egyptian, a foreigner, a servant, someone outside the primary bloodline through which God's covenant with Abraham would flow. By every social and religious expectation of her time, she should have been the last person to receive a direct visitation and promise from the God of Abraham. And yet, she became the first woman in Scripture to give God a name. Not Sarah, the covenant matriarch. Not Abraham, the father of faith. Hagar, the overlooked servant, cast into the wilderness. This is the shock, God's chosen one. The eyes that were truly upon Hagar did not belong to the people who mattered most in the social structure of her world. They belonged to the God who deliberately moves toward those the world overlooks. If you have felt like an outsider, like someone whose voice does not carry the same weight as others around you, like someone standing outside the circle of attention and favor, I want you to receive this truth deeply. The God who sees does not distribute his attention according to human hierarchies. He moves toward the wilderness, toward the discarded, toward the ones who believe themselves forgotten, and he meets them there with a promise and a name. This spiritual meaning sets the stage for everything that follows in this message. As we move forward into practical signs and real-life application, hold on to this truth firmly. Whatever wilderness you are walking through was not designed to destroy you. It may very well be the exact location where your own encounter with El Roi is waiting to unfold. Now let us bring this truth down from the realm of ancient story and spiritual principle into the very real, very specific circumstances you may be walking through today, God's chosen one. Understanding Hagar's story intellectually is valuable, but the purpose of this message is not simply information. It is transformation. So let us look closely at the signs that reveal God's presence even when it feels hidden. And let us speak directly into a few specific situations many of you watching right now are carrying. The first sign to recognize is this: provision that appears only after your eyes are opened, not before. Remember that in Genesis chapter 21, the well of water was already present near Hagar and her son. It was not created in that moment out of nothing. It had been there, and yet Hagar could not see it until God opened her eyes. This is an important distinction for anyone waiting for a breakthrough right now. Sometimes the answer to your prayer is not that God must create something entirely new, but that God must open your eyes to see what has already been placed within your reach. If you are someone who has been waiting a long season for a breakthrough, whether that is financial provision, an open door in your career, healing in your body, or clarity about your next step, I want to gently ask you to consider whether there might be a well nearby that your grief, fear, or exhaustion has kept hidden from you. This does not mean your pain is not real or that your waiting has been easy. It simply means that the posture of asking God to open your eyes may be as important as asking Him to provide something new. Pray today, not only for a door to open, but for your eyes to be open to what He has already placed near you. The second sign to recognize is this: God's timing often runs through wilderness seasons rather than around them. Hagar's story did not include a shortcut around the desert. It included an encounter within the desert. If you are in a season of unemployment, watching your savings dwindle while applications go unanswered, I want you to hear this clearly. The wilderness you are walking through right now is not evidence that God has abandoned the plan for your life. Many of the most significant biblical figures walked through extended wilderness seasons before stepping into their calling. Moses spent 40 years tending sheep in obscurity before the burning bush. Joseph spent years in an Egyptian prison before being elevated to the palace. Your current wilderness, however uncomfortable, does not disqualify you from the promise. It may very well be preparing you for it. The third sign to recognize involves relationships, and specifically the pain of betrayal or rejection. Hagar was rejected twice by the same household. First pushed into a role she did not choose, then blamed for the tension it created, and eventually cast out entirely. If you are someone recovering from betrayal, whether from a spouse, a close friend, a family member, or a community you once trusted, I want you to notice something important about Hagar's story. God did not ask her to pretend. The betrayal did not hurt. He did not minimize what Sarai had done to her. Instead, He met her honestly in her pain, asked her to name her situation truthfully, and then gave her a promise for her future that had nothing to do with the people who had hurt her. This is a crucial distinction for anyone walking through the aftermath of betrayal. Healing does not require you to pretend the wound never happened, nor does it require you to remain bitter and frozen in the moment of injury. Healing looks like Hagar's honest answer to the angel, naming exactly where she had come from and the pain she was fleeing, followed by receiving a promise for where she was going. That was not dependent on the people who had betrayed her. Your future is not chained to the people who hurt you. The eyes of God upon your life are not diminished by the cruelty of those who have overlooked or mistreated you. The fourth sign to recognize is this: sometimes what feels like abandonment by people is actually redirection by God. This is a difficult truth to sit with, but it deserves honest reflection. When Sarai treated Hagar harshly and she fled into the wilderness, that painful rejection led her directly into an encounter with the angel of the Lord that she would never have experienced while comfortably remaining inside Abram's household. This does not mean God causes the cruelty of others, nor does it excuse mistreatment. But it does mean that God is skilled at bringing meaning and redirection, even out of situations He did not initiate through the sinful choices of others. If you are someone who has been let go from a job you thought you would retire from, or ended a relationship you believed would last forever, or been excluded from a friend group or family gathering that left you feeling invisible and overlooked, consider the possibility that this painful redirection, while genuinely hurtful, may be leading you toward a wilderness encounter that the comfortable path you previously walked would never have provided. Let me speak now directly to the specific circumstances woven throughout this message. If you are someone who feels invisible or judged by the people around you, perhaps at work where your efforts go unnoticed while others receive credit, perhaps within your family where your voice seems to carry less weight than others, perhaps within a friend group where you sense you are tolerated rather than truly valued, I want you to receive Hagar's testimony as your own possession today. You are the God who sees me. Say those words slowly. The eyes of the God who formed you have never once shifted their gaze away from your life, even during the moments you have felt most overlooked by everyone around you. If you are someone who has been waiting a long season for a breakthrough, watching the calendar pages turn while the answer to your prayer remains delayed, I want you to remember the well that was already present near Hagar before her eyes were open to see it. Ask God today, specifically and honestly, to open your eyes to provision, opportunity, or clarity that may already be closer than you realize. Your breakthrough may not require an entirely new creation. It may simply require a fresh opening of your eyes. And if you are someone recovering from betrayal or rejection, someone who was cast out the way Hagar was cast out, someone nursing the wound of being sent away by people who should have protected and valued you, hear this clearly. Being sent away by people is not the same as being abandoned by God. The wilderness you were pushed into against your will may be leading you toward the exact place where His voice will meet you, where His provision will be uncovered before your eyes, and where a new name and a new understanding of your worth will be given to you, just as it was given to Hagar beside the well of the living one who sees. This message is speaking to something real in you today. If you are feeling the truth of it landing in places that have needed this word for a very long time, would you take a moment right now and like this video? It is such a small thing, but it carries genuine weight. Every time you press that button, you tell the platform that this kind of message matters, and it opens the door for someone else who is in the middle of this exact battle to find these words when they need them most. You could be the reason another chosen one stumbles across this message at the precise moment they needed to hear it. And if you know someone who is in the middle of family warfare right now, someone who is feeling the specific exhaustion of fighting spiritual battles in their own home, share this with them today. You do not need to say anything elaborate. Simply send it and let the message speak for itself. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for another person is simply put the right word in front of them at the right time. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, this would be a beautiful moment to do that. There is so much more that God wants to speak into your life through this space, and subscribing ensures that every new message finds its way to you. This channel exists entirely as a ministry. It is not monetized by the platform, which means it runs on faith and on the generosity of people who believe in what is being built here. If you feel genuinely moved to support this work, the details are in the description below and in the pinned comment on this video. There is never any pressure attached to that invitation. This message was given to you freely and will always be. But if your heart is stirred, know that your support directly sustains a ministry that is reaching chosen ones all over the world who are fighting the exact battle this section has been describing. Let me share with you now a story, a picture of how this pattern plays out in a life much like your own, God's chosen one. While this account is offered as an illustration rather than a historical record, the emotions and circumstances within it reflect the real experiences of countless people who have walked through seasons very similar to what you may be facing right now. There was a woman named Miriam who worked for many years at a company she believed valued her contributions. She arrived early, stayed late, carried the burdens of her team quietly, and trained several younger colleagues who were eventually promoted above her. Each time a promotion was announced, her name was mentioned as a strong candidate, and each time someone else was chosen. She began to feel invisible in the very place she had poured her energy and loyalty into for over a decade. She started to wonder whether her work truly mattered to anyone, whether her presence registered at all beyond the tasks she completed. Then, during a period of company restructuring, Miriam was let go entirely. Her position eliminated without warning after 15 years of faithful service. She walked out of that building on a gray afternoon, feeling exactly like Hagar must have felt walking into the wilderness, dismissed, discarded, and uncertain of what lay ahead. She had given so much of herself to a place that ultimately treated her as replaceable. For weeks afterward, she found herself unable to sleep through the night, replaying every meeting where she had been overlooked, every moment she had trained someone who was later promoted past her. During this season of unemployment, Miriam's finances grew tighter with each passing month. She applied to dozens of positions and heard back from almost none of them. She began to wonder, in the quiet hours of early morning, when worry visits most heavily, whether she had somehow become invisible to the entire working world, not only to her former employer. She prayed, though her prayers often felt more like exhausted whispers into an empty room than confident declarations of faith. "Where are you?" she would ask. "Do you even see what I am going through?" One evening, a friend from her church invited her to a small gathering where a woman shared the story of Hagar, the servant cast into the wilderness, who discovered that God had been watching her the entire time. Miriam sat in the back of that gathering, and something inside her chest cracked open as she listened. She recognized herself immediately in Hagar's story, the sense of being used and then discarded, the wilderness she never chose to enter, the exhausting question of whether anyone, human or divine, truly saw her. That night, Miriam went home and, for the first time in months, prayed honestly rather than exhaustedly. She told God plainly how invisible she felt, how betrayed by years of loyalty that seemed to count for nothing, how frightened she was about her finances and her future. She did not dress up her prayer with polished language. She simply named her situation truthfully, the way Hagar named her situation to the angel at the spring. In the weeks that followed, something shifted, not dramatically at first, but steadily. A former colleague, someone Miriam had trained years earlier and had not spoken to in a long while, reached out unexpectedly, mentioning an opening at a smaller company that valued precisely the kind of quiet, thorough diligence Miriam had always brought to her work. It was not a position Miriam would have found through the job boards she had been searching for months. It came through a connection that had been present all along, a well she had not seen because her eyes had been fixed on her grief and her fear rather than on what God had already placed nearby. The new position paid less initially than her former role, but the environment could not have been more different. For the first time in years, Miriam felt genuinely seen by her colleagues and her supervisor, her contributions noticed and named rather than quietly absorbed into someone else's success. Within 2 years, she was promoted into a leadership role she had never dared to imagine for herself while working at her previous company. Looking back, Miriam often says that the wilderness season of unemployment, as frightening as it was, became the very place where she rediscovered her worth was never tied to the approval or promotion decisions of people who had overlooked her for years. Miriam's story is not meant to promise that every difficult season resolves so neatly. nor that every prayer receives an answer within a predictable timeline. Some wildernesses last far longer than others, and this message does not intend to minimize the real and lingering pain many of you carry. But Miriam's testimony echoes the same pattern found in Hagar's account, a woman overlooked and cast aside, walking through a wilderness she did not choose, discovering along the way that the eyes she believed had abandoned her had in fact never stopped watching over her future. If you are walking through your own version of Miriam's story right now, whether that is unemployment, the sting of being passed over, or the ache of feeling invisible in spaces where you have given your best, I want you to hold on to this pattern firmly. The wilderness is often the exact place where wells you could not previously see become visible. The eyes that matter most have never left your side, even in seasons when every other set of eyes seemed to look past you entirely. As we move forward now into the emotional heart of this message, I want you to carry Miriam's story alongside Hagar's story, like two lanterns lighting the path ahead. Both women walked through rejection. Both women wondered whether anyone truly saw them, and both women discovered, in their own time and their own way, that the answer to that ache was far more personal, far more tender, and far more shocking than they ever expected. That discovery is exactly where we are headed next. God's chosen one. So stay with me as we step into the deepest part of this message together. Beloved chosen one, we have walked together through the wilderness, through the well, through the pain of a woman overlooked by everyone she trusted. Now we arrive at the place this entire message has been leading toward, the emotional heart of the story, the truth the title of this video promised to reveal. All eyes are on you. And now, finally, we speak plainly about whose eyes those truly are. I want you to imagine, for a moment, standing exactly where Hagar stood. Picture the sun beating down on cracked earth, the weight of exhaustion pulling at your body, the silence of a wilderness that offers no answers, only more questions. Picture believing, in that moment, that you are utterly alone, that whatever love once surrounded you has evaporated, that whatever value you once held in the eyes of others has been erased along with your usefulness to them. This is the loneliest place a human soul can stand, the place where invisibility feels total. And it is precisely in that place, God's chosen one, that the angel of the Lord appeared to Hagar, not in the comfort of Abram's tent, not in a moment of celebration or success, in the wilderness, in the place of her deepest despair. This detail is not incidental. It is the entire message wrapped into a single scene. God did not wait for Hagar to climb out of her crisis before revealing himself to her. He came to her in the middle of it, while she was still afraid, while she was still uncertain, while she still believed herself forgotten. This is the shock beneath the title of this video. You have perhaps spent years believing that the eyes upon you were the eyes of judgment, comparison, or indifference. The eyes of coworkers measuring your performance, the eyes of family members comparing your life to someone else's, the eyes of strangers scrolling past your existence without a second thought. But the truth is far more tender and far more overwhelming than any of that. The eyes that have truly never left you belong to the God who formed you in secret, who counted your days before you lived a single one of them, who has watched over every tear you have cried in rooms where no other person was present to witness your pain. Think about this carefully. Every time you have felt unseen, God was watching. Every time you believed no one noticed your struggle, God was near. Every night you lay awake wondering if your life mattered to anyone, the God who sees you was fully aware of your location, your circumstances, and your heartache. He has never once needed a report from anyone else to know what you are walking through. He has never once looked away. distracted by someone more prominent or more visible in the eyes of the world. This is why Hagar's naming of God carries such astonishing weight. She did not name him the God who watches from far away. She named him El Roi, the God who sees me, using language so intimate that it reads almost like the words of a woman describing a companion who has walked beside her the entire time, rather than a distant deity observing from the clouds. And remember, she was not part of the covenant family. She was a servant, an outsider, someone the world around her had already decided did not matter enough to warrant personal attention from the God of Abraham. And yet, it was Hagar, of all people in the book of Genesis, who became the first person in Scripture to give God a personal name. If this truth has not yet settled into your heart, let it settle now. The eyes of God do not move according to social status, financial success, physical beauty, or public recognition. They move toward the wilderness. They move toward the discarded. They move toward the ones who believe themselves forgotten, precisely because those are the souls most in need of being reminded that they were never forgotten at all. Perhaps you have spent your whole life striving to be seen by people who never truly looked at you the way you deserved. Perhaps you have exhausted yourself trying to earn the approval of a parent who withheld it, a partner who dismissed you, a boss who never acknowledged your effort, a friend group that never quite let you fully inside. I want to say this as gently and as firmly as I can. You do not need their eyes to validate your worth. The eyes that matter most have already declared you worthy of attention, worthy of pursuit, and worthy of a promise, long before any human being ever had the chance to overlook you. Consider the words of Psalm chapter 33, verse 18, which says that the eyes of the Lord are on those who fear him, on those whose hope is in his unfailing love. Notice that this attention is not reserved for the successful or the prominent. It rests upon those whose hope is as anchored in him, regardless of their circumstances. Consider also 2 Chronicles, chapter 16, verse 9, which declares that the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him. This is not passive observation. This is active searching, active strengthening, active involvement in the lives of those who turn toward him. God's chosen one. I want you to consider the shock of this truth applied directly to your life today. Whatever room you are sitting in, whatever silence surrounds you, whatever ache you carry about being overlooked, misunderstood, or dismissed by the people around you, the eyes of the God who formed the universe are fixed upon you in this very moment with a tenderness beyond anything human eyes could offer. He has never once been distracted from your story. He has never once forgotten your name. He has never once looked past you towards someone he considered more important. This truth does not erase the pain of feeling overlooked by people. It does not pretend that human rejection does not hurt, or that being cast aside does not leave real wounds that require real healing. But it does reframe the entire foundation upon which your sense of worth is built. If the God who sees the sparrow fall, as spoken in Matthew chapter 10, verse 29, has counted every hair on your head, then the opinions of those who overlooked you were never the final verdict on your value. They were simply flawed, limited, human perspectives, incapable of perceiving what the eyes of God have known about you since before you were formed. Let this truth settle over you now like a warm covering against the cold. You are not invisible. You have never been invisible. Every lonely night, every overlooked effort, every moment you wondered if your life mattered, the eyes of El Roi were upon you, and they remain upon you still. This is the shock the title of this video promised, and I pray it lands in your spirit with the same weight it landed upon Hagar beside that ancient well, transforming despair into a testimony that echoes for generations. If this is speaking to something real in your life, if these words are landing in places that you have kept hidden, even from the people closest to you, then know that you are in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. This channel exists because there are people just like you who needed someone to speak into the silence of their financial struggle, without judgment, without condescension, and without empty promises. It exists because the message of God's faithfulness toward His chosen ones is one that needs to keep going, keep reaching, keep finding the people who need it most. If you have not already subscribed to this channel, we would love for you to do that now. Not because a number on a screen matters more than you do, but because subscribing means that the next time God has a word that is meant for your season, it will find you. Share this message with someone you love who has been carrying the weight of financial pressure in silence. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone is put the right word in front of them at the right time. And if this content has genuinely ministered to you, if it has brought comfort or clarity or renewed faith into your life, liking this video is one simple way to help it reach others who are searching for exactly this kind of encouragement. We also want to say this gently and from a sincere place. Creating this content, sustaining this ministry, and continuing to produce messages that go this deep requires time, prayer, and real effort. If you believe in the value of what we are building here, and you feel led to be part of keeping it going, there is the donation link available in the pinned comment and in the video description. If you believe in the value of this content and want to help us continue to maintain it, you can support the channel through the link pinned in the comments or in the video description. This is not something you are required to do, and it carries absolutely no conditions. It is simply an open door for those who feel in their hearts that they want to partner with what God is doing through this space. Whether you give financially, whether you share the message, or whether you are simply present here today receiving this word, we are deeply and genuinely grateful for you. Every single one of you matters to us and to this ministry. Having stood together in this emotional climax, God's chosen one, let us now turn to the scriptures themselves, allowing the very words of the Bible to reinforce and deepen this truth in your heart. There is something powerful about hearing these verses not as isolated quotations, but as a chorus of witnesses, each one confirming from a different angle that the eyes of God have never once left your life. The first verse to consider is Genesis chapter 16, verse 13, the very verse born out of Hagar's own testimony, where she calls the name of the Lord who spoke to her, "You are the God who sees me." This verse matters because it is not a theological statement crafted by a theologian in comfort. It is the raw, personal declaration of a woman who had just experienced the most frightening season of her life, and who emerged from that wilderness encounter with a name for God that had never been spoken before. When you feel overlooked, remember that this name belongs to you as much as it belonged to her. The second verse is Psalm chapter 139, verses 1 through 4, where David writes that the Lord has searched him and known him, that he knows his sitting down and his rising up, that he understands his thoughts from far away. David goes on to say that the Lord is familiar with all his ways, and that even before a word is on his tongue, the Lord knows it completely. This is not distant observation. This is intimate familiarity, the kind of knowing that comes from a relationship rather than surveillance. If you have ever felt like your inner thoughts and struggles were too small or too private for God to notice, this verse dismantles that fear completely. The third verse is 2 Chronicles chapter 16 verse 9, which we touched on briefly before, stating that the eyes of the Lord range throughout the whole earth to give strength to those whose hearts are fully committed to Him. This verse reminds us that God's seeing is purposeful. It is not simply informational, as though God were cataloging facts about your life out of curiosity. His seeing leads to strengthening. When He sees your weariness, His response is to pour strength into you. When He sees your fear, His response is to draw near with courage. His attention is never neutral. It is always moving toward your good. The fourth verse worth holding close is Matthew chapter 10 verses 29 through 31, where Jesus teaches that not one sparrow falls to the ground apart from the Father's knowledge, and that even the hairs on your head are all numbered. He concludes by saying, "So do not be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows." This passage matters because Jesus uses the smallest, most seemingly insignificant creature in creation to illustrate the scope of the Father's attentiveness. If God notices the fall of a single sparrow, a creature with no soul, no eternal destiny, and little economic value even in ancient markets, how much more does He notice the details of your life, a being made in His own image, destined for eternity? The fifth verse is Isaiah chapter 49, verse 15 through 16, where God asks whether a mother can forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has borne. He answers His own question by declaring that even if a mother could forget, He would not forget His people, for He has engraved them on the palms of His hands. This is one of the most tender images in all of Scripture. Engraving is not a temporary mark. It is permanent, deliberate, and costly to create. God is telling us that His memory of us, His attentiveness toward us, is not casual or forgettable. It is etched into Him in a way that cannot be erased. The sixth verse worth considering is Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11, where God declares that He knows the plans He has for His people, plans for their welfare and not for calamity, to give them a future and a hope. This verse is often quoted, sometimes so frequently that its weight can be lost through familiarity, but consider its context. It was spoken to a people in exile, a people who had been removed from their homeland, who felt forgotten and abandoned in a foreign land, much like Hagar felt abandoned in the wilderness. If God could speak a future and a hope over an entire exiled nation, He can certainly speak the same future and hope over your individual life, wherever you find yourself today. The seventh and final verse to hold in this section is Hebrews chapter 13 verse 5, where the writer reminds us that God has said, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." This promise stands as the theological backbone beneath every story we have explored today. Hagar was left by Sarai. She was cast out by Abraham's household twice. And yet in both instances, the God who sees found her, spoke to her, and provided for her. Whatever human abandonment you have experienced, whatever rejection has left scars on your heart, this promise remains unbroken. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. His eyes remain fixed upon you even when every human eye has turned away. As you carry these 7 passages with you beyond this video, I want you to notice a pattern woven through all of them. God's seeing is not passive. It leads to strengthening, to provision, to permanent remembrance, to hope, and to an unbreakable promise of presence. This is who is watching you, God's chosen one. Not a distant, indifferent observer, but a covenant-keeping God whose attention toward you has never wavered, whose eyes have followed you through every wilderness, and whose promises remain as steady today as they were beside that ancient well where Hagar first gave him his name. Let us pause now, God's chosen one, and turn our hearts together toward prayer. I want you to lay down whatever distractions remain, whatever anxious thoughts have been tugging at the edges of your mind, and simply be present with me in this moment as we bring everything we have walked through today before the God who sees. Heavenly Father, I come before you now on behalf of every person listening to these words, and I ask that your presence would settle over each one of them like a covering of peace they have not felt in a long while. Lord, you know every name, every face, every heart hidden behind this screen right now, and I ask that you would meet each person exactly where they are, the way you met Hagar beside that spring in the wilderness so long ago. Father, for the one who feels invisible, who has poured themselves into a job, a family, or a friendship, only to feel overlooked and undervalued in return, I ask that you would remind them today that your eyes have never once left them. Let the ache of feeling unseen by people be met with the overwhelming reality of being fully known and fully loved by you. Help them release the exhausting striving to be noticed by those who have withheld their attention, and instead rest in the security of being seen by the one whose opinion truly matters. Father, for the one who has been waiting so long for a breakthrough, whether in their finances, their health, their relationships, or their sense of purpose, I ask that you would open their eyes today the way you opened Hagar's eyes to see the well that had been there all along. Where there is provision nearby that fear or exhaustion has hidden from view, reveal it now. Where there is a door already open that weariness has caused them to overlook, illuminate it clearly. Give them fresh strength to keep walking through this season of waiting, and remind them that delay is not denial, that your timing, though often mysterious, is never careless. Father, for the one recovering from betrayal, from rejection, from being cast aside by people who should have protected and valued them, I ask for a special measure of your healing presence right now, just as you met Hagar honestly, allowing her to name her pain without minimizing it. Meet this person in the same honest way. Let them feel permission to grieve what was lost, to acknowledge the wound without pretending it does not exist, while also receiving the deeper truth that their future is not chained to the people who hurt them. Give them the strength to release bitterness, not because the betrayal did not matter, but because their healing matters more than the power that unforgiveness holds over their heart. Lord, for anyone listening who has walked through unemployment, who has sent out application after application only to be met with silence, I ask that you would move on their behalf in ways only you can orchestrate. Bring unexpected connections. You brought Miriam's former colleague back into her life at just the right moment. Open doors that no striving or networking could open on their own. Restore their sense of purpose and value, even in this season where their productivity looks different than it once did. Father, for anyone carrying grief over a loved one who has passed, I ask that you would wrap your comfort around their heart in a way that words alone cannot provide. Let them sense, even in the quiet ache of missing someone deeply, that your eyes remain upon them, that you have not forgotten their sorrow, and that healing, though slow, is possible under your care. Lord, I pray also for the courage to trust you in seasons that do not make sense. Just as Hagar could not have predicted that her flight into the wilderness would lead to an encounter with your presence, help each person listening trust that the difficult, confusing seasons of their own lives are not outside your knowledge or your care. Help them hold on to the truth that wilderness seasons, however painful, are often the very places where your voice becomes clearest and your presence becomes most tangible. Father, would you give each person listening today a fresh sense of identity rooted not in how others have treated them, but in how you see them. Just as Hagar named you the God who sees, let each listener today declare that same truth over their own life. however quietly, however uncertain their faith may currently feel. Let this declaration become an anchor they return to in every future season of doubt, reaction, or waiting. I ask, Lord, that you would soften hardened hearts that have grown bitter through years of feeling overlooked. I ask that you would strengthen weary hearts that have grown tired of hoping. I ask that you would heal broken hearts that carry wounds from people who should have loved them better. And I ask that you would awaken hearts that have grown numb to your presence, reminding each person listening that they were never as alone as they believed themselves to be. Thank you, Father, for meeting Hagar in her wilderness. And thank you for meeting every person listening to this message in whatever wilderness they currently walk through. Thank you for being El Roy, the God who sees not from a distance, but with the intimate closeness of a companion who has walked every step of this journey alongside us. We receive your promise today. We receive your presence today. We choose to believe, even in seasons of doubt, that your eyes have never once left us in. Your name we pray, and we thank you in advance for the healing, the provision, and the awakening that is already unfolding in each life listening to these words. Amen. If that is you today, if something in these words landed in a place that needed landing, we want to ask you sincerely to press the like button right now. That single action carries this message forward into the feed of someone else who needs it just as much as you did. It costs you nothing, and it could change everything for the person it reaches next. If you feel the nudge to share this video, please follow it. Put it on your page, send it to a friend, forward it to the group chat where someone has been quietly struggling. You may be the reason the right person finds the right word at exactly the right moment. That is not a small thing. That is divine partnership in action. Subscribe if you are not already part of this community, so that when the next message is released, the one that speaks directly into the next phase of what you are walking into, it finds you without delay. And for those of you who feel personally moved to support the continuation of this work, we want you to know that this channel is no longer monetized. We create these messages and release them freely because we believe they belong to whoever needs them, not behind any wall of payment or requirement. But the work of creating them is real, and it continues only because of the generosity of those who feel led to give. If that is you, there is a link in the description and in the pinned comment where you can offer a voluntary donation to help keep these messages going. We are genuinely deeply grateful for every person who gives, every person who prays, and every person who simply shows up to listen. You are all part of what makes this possible. As we move now toward the final stretch of this message, God's chosen one, I want to speak to you about the journey of inner renewal that follows an encounter like the one we have explored today. Hagar's story did not end simply with a name for God and a promise about her descendants. Her story continued, and so does yours. After every wilderness encounter, there is a season of integration, a season where the truth we have received must slowly become the truth we actually live by. Spiritual awakening rarely arrives as a single dramatic moment that instantly resolves every wound. More often, it arrives as a doorway, an invitation into a longer process of surrender and renewal. Hagar returned to Sarai's household after her first wilderness encounter, carrying the knowledge that she had been seen by God. But she still had to walk out the reality of her circumstances day by day. This is often how healing works in our own lives as well. The revelation comes in a moment, but the living out of that revelation unfolds gradually through the ordinary days that follow. If today's message has stirred something in your heart, God's chosen one, I want to gently guide you toward what this next season of inner renewal might look like. The first step is releasing the exhausting need to be validated by every set of eyes around you. So much of our anxiety and self-doubt comes from constantly measuring our worth against the opinions of others, wondering if we have been noticed enough, praised enough, included enough. Spiritual awakening invites you to lay this exhausting striving down. You do not need to perform for approval from people whose opinions were never meant to define your identity. You are already fully seen, fully known, and fully valued by the one whose opinion carries eternal weight. The second step in this journey of renewal is learning to recognize God's presence, even in ordinary, undramatic moments. Not every encounter with God looks like an angel appearing at a wilderness spring. Sometimes His presence shows up in a quiet sense of peace during a difficult conversation, in an unexpected word of encouragement from a stranger, in a moment of clarity that settles an anxious mind. Awakening means training your spiritual eyes to notice these smaller, quieter signs of His presence, the way Hagar's eyes were eventually opened to see the well that had been there all along. The third step involves gentle surrender, releasing your grip on the specific timeline and shape you believe your breakthrough must take. Often, our frustration in seasons of waiting comes not simply from the waiting itself, but from our insistence that the answer must arrive in a particular form, on a particular schedule. Surrender does not mean giving up hope. It means releasing control over the details while continuing to trust the character of the one who holds those details. Hagar likely never imagined that her path back into Abraham's household would eventually lead, years later, to another wilderness encounter where her eyes would open to a well she desperately needed. Surrender means trusting that God's methods, though sometimes unfamiliar to us, remain consistently good. The fourth step in this awakening journey is allowing your pain to become a source of ministry rather than a permanent identity. Hagar's testimony, "You are the God who sees me," did not remain locked inside her own private experience. It became recorded scripture, read and treasured by generations who never met her personally, yet who found comfort in her words during their own wilderness seasons. Your pain, once healed and integrated, often becomes one of the most powerful tools you carry to comfort others walking through similar struggles. The invisibility you have felt, the betrayal you have survived, the waiting you have endured, none of it is wasted. It becomes part of a testimony that God can use to strengthen someone else who feels exactly as alone as you once did. The fifth step is learning to trust God's plan, even when it unfolds differently than you expected. Consider that Hagar's son Ishmael was promised to become the father of a great nation, yet not the specific covenant nation through which the Messiah would eventually come. God's plan for Hagar was real, valuable, and significant, even though it looked different from Sarah's path. This reminds us that God's good plan for your life may not look identical to someone else's blessing. Comparison often steals the joy of our own unique calling. Awakening invites you to embrace the specific, unrepeatable shape of the story God is writing through your life, rather than measuring it against someone else's chapter. As you walk through this season of renewal, God's chosen one, remember that awakening is rarely instantaneous. It is more like the slow opening of eyes adjusting to sudden light after a long time in darkness. Give yourself grace during this process. If old anxieties about being overlooked resurface, gently remind yourself of the truth of El Roi. If old wounds from betrayal flare up unexpectedly, allow yourself to bring that pain honestly before God rather than suppressing it. Healing is rarely linear, but it is always possible when placed into the hands of the one who sees every step of your journey. Let this season of your life become the well beside which you, too, discover a new name for God, a name born not out of comfortable theology, but out of your own lived encounter with His faithfulness in your wilderness. Whatever has felt hidden, dry, and forgotten in your life until now is about to be illuminated. Your eyes are being opened, slowly, gently, and completely, to the provision, the presence, and the promise that have been near you the entire time. As we come now to the closing of this message, God's chosen one, I want to draw every thread we have walked through today into a single unified truth that I pray you carry with you long after this video ends. We began by acknowledging that you did not arrive here by accident, that something greater than chance arranged for these words to reach you today. We walked through the story of Hagar, a woman overlooked by the people closest to her, cast into a wilderness she never chose, who discovered, in the middle of her deepest despair, that the eyes of God had never once left her. We explored the spiritual meaning behind her story, understanding that being overlooked by people is never the same as being overlooked by God, and that wilderness seasons often become the very places where His presence becomes most vividly clear. We looked at practical signs to help you recognize God's provision, even when it feels hidden, remembering that sometimes the well is already near you, waiting only for your eyes to be opened. We heard the story of Miriam, a woman whose season of unemployment and feeling invisible mirrored Hagar's ancient testimony, and who discovered breakthrough not through a shortcut around her wilderness, but through faithful presence within it. We stood together at the emotional climax of this message, confronting the shocking truth that the eyes truly watching you all along were never the eyes of judgment or comparison, but the tender, attentive eyes of El Roi, the God who sees. We anchored this truth in 7 scriptures, each one confirming from a different angle that God's attention toward you leads to strengthening, provision, permanent remembrance, hope, and an unbreakable promise of presence. We prayed together, laying every burden before the one who sees each heart clearly, and we walked through the gentle, ongoing journey of awakening and renewal that follows every wilderness encounter. Now, God's chosen one, I want to leave you with a final charge. Do not walk away from this message and simply return to the same anxious cycle of seeking validation from eyes that were never meant to define you. Instead, carry Hagar's testimony as your own possession. When you feel invisible at work, remember, you are the God who sees me. When you feel passed over in your family, remember, you are the God who sees me. When you feel forgotten in your waiting, remember, you are the God who sees me. Let this become the quiet anchor you return to in every season of doubt, comparison, or fear. If this message has stirred something within your heart today, I want to gently ask you to consider 3 simple actions before you go. First, if these words spoke to a place of pain or hope within you, please take a moment to like this video. This small action helps this message reach someone else who may be sitting in their own wilderness today, believing themselves forgotten. Second, consider subscribing to this channel so that you never miss a future message that might arrive at the exact moment you need it most, the same way this message may have arrived at exactly the right moment for you today. Third, if you know someone walking through their own season of feeling overlooked, unemployed, betrayed, or forgotten, please share this message with them. You may never fully know how much your simple act of sharing could mean to someone standing at their own well in the wilderness, waiting for their eyes to be opened. As we close, I want to speak a final blessing over you, God's chosen one. May the eyes of El Roi rest upon you not only today, but in every season that follows, whether comfortable or difficult, whether celebrated or hidden from the notice of others. May you never again mistake the silence of a wilderness season for the absence of God's presence. May every well that has been placed near you become visible in due time, and may every wound of betrayal or rejection you carry be met with the deep, healing knowledge that you were never truly abandoned. May you walk forward from this moment with a new name written over your life, not given by the people who overlooked you, but given by the one who formed you, numbered your days, and has watched over you with unwavering attention since before you took your first breath. You are not invisible. You have never been invisible. All eyes are indeed upon you, and the truth of whose eyes those are should bring you not fear, but the deepest comfort you have known in a long while. Go now in peace, God's chosen one, carrying the truth of Elroy with you into whatever wilderness or breakthrough awaits you next. You are seen, you are known, you are loved beyond measure, and you were brought to this message today for exactly this reason, so that you would finally understand all eyes are on you, and the one watching has never once looked away. If what you are reading right now is igniting something in you, if the thought of your anointing being activated, your gifts being sharpened, and your new season beginning to take shape is stirring a fire in your spirit that has been quiet for too long, we want to ask you warmly and sincerely to share this message with someone who is on the edge of their own awakening. Someone who needs to hear that what God placed in them has not expired, that the gifts are still there, that the calling is still intact, that the new thing is already beginning to rise, even if they cannot feel it yet. Like this video so that it finds its way to the people who were meant to receive it. And if this community has become a place of genuine spiritual nourishment for you, subscribe so that you remain connected to everything that heaven continues to release through this channel in the seasons ahead. And if the words spoken through this ministry have walked alongside you in moments that mattered, if you have found yourself returning here in the quiet hours when you needed to be reminded of who you are and what you carry, we want you to know that there is a link in the description if you ever feel genuinely led to support the continuation of this work. This ministry is built on prayer and on a sincere desire to reach chosen ones who are scattered across the world and need a word that meets them exactly where they are. If you feel moved to give, your support directly sustains that mission. But please hear us clearly and completely. There is no obligation, no expectation, and no spiritual transaction being implied. Whether you give or whether today is simply not that season, your presence here is a gift to this community. And we are genuinely, deeply grateful for every moment you spend allowing these words to speak into your life. There is a particular kind of ache that lives in the space between being present and being seen. You can walk through an entire day surrounded by voices, faces, obligations, and still return home feeling as though no one truly noticed you were there at all. This is the ache Zacchaeus carried long before that sycamore tree entered his story. And this is the ache many of you carry right now, quietly, without ever saying it aloud to another person. So let me speak to that ache directly, chosen one, because this is the emotional heart of everything we have walked through so far. God has never once abandoned you. Not for a single day, not for a single hour, not even in the moments when your prayers felt like they dissolved into silence, when your circumstances seemed to stretch on without relief, when you wondered quietly whether anyone, human or divine, truly remembered your name. Think again about that moment beneath the tree. Out of an entire crowd pressing along that road in Jericho, Jesus stopped for one man. He did not stop because the crowd demanded it. He did not stop because Zacchaeus was famous, respected, or influential. He stopped because his eyes were already fixed on the one person everyone else had decided to overlook. This is who God is. not a distant observer scanning only the successful, the celebrated, the visible. He is the God who looks past the noise of the crowd and finds the one person hidden in the branches, waiting, hoping, wondering if anyone will notice. I want you to hear this next part slowly. If you have felt abandoned during a season of grief, watching someone you love slip away while the world around you continued moving as though nothing had changed, I want you to know that your grief has never gone unnoticed by heaven. If you have felt abandoned during unemployment, sending application after application into what feels like an empty void, wondering if you have simply become forgettable, I want you to know that the same God who noticed one small man in a tree has never once stopped noticing you. If you have felt abandoned in loneliness, surrounded by people yet feeling utterly unaccompanied in your deepest struggles, I want you to know that presence does not always look the way we expect it to. Sometimes it looks like a quiet nudge toward hope. Sometimes it looks like a single verse that suddenly makes sense. Sometimes it looks like a stranger's kindness arriving on the exact day you needed it most. Consider the words spoken in the book of Isaiah, chapter 49, verse 15, where God asks whether a woman can forget her nursing child, so that she should have no compassion on the son of her womb, and then declares that even if these should forget, he will not forget his people. This is not a soft, sentimental promise offered without weight. This is a declaration meant to counter the deepest fear many of us carry, the fear that we are simply too small, too easily overlooked, too insignificant to remain in the memory of the one who holds the universe together. And yet here, in this verse, God compares his faithfulness to the fiercest, most instinctive love a human being can experience, the love of a mother for her nursing child, and declares that his remembrance of you runs even deeper than that. Let this settle into the places where doubt has taken root. You have never been forgotten, not during the years when your prayers seemed unanswered, not during the seasons when your effort went unnoticed by everyone around you, not during the nights when you cried alone, believing no one else understood the weight you carried. Every tear, every whispered prayer, every quiet moment of despair has been fully seen, fully known, fully held by the same God who once stopped beneath a tree to speak one name aloud in the middle of an indifferent crowd. I want you to imagine, for a moment, standing exactly where Zacchaeus stood, high in those branches, watching Jesus approach. Imagine the pounding of your own heart as the distance closes, the uncertainty of whether you will be noticed or simply passed by like everyone else seemed to expect. And then imagine the exact moment Jesus stops, not walks by, not glances briefly and continues on his way. He stops completely, lifts his eyes, and speaks your name. This is not simply a historical reenactment for you to admire from a distance. This is the very posture God takes toward you today. He is not simply passing through your life on his way to somewhere more important. He is not distracted by larger, more significant concerns elsewhere in the world. In this very moment, as you listen to these words, he is fully present, fully attentive, fully aware of every burden pressing down on your shoulders. Perhaps you are thinking of a specific wound right now, a moment when someone you trusted walked away, a season when illness stole strength from your body, a loss that left a permanent absence in your home. I want to gently remind you that even in the deepest valleys, Scripture consistently reveals a God who draws near rather than retreats. In Psalm 34, verse 18, we read that the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Nearness, not distance. Presence, not abandonment. This has always been his posture toward those who feel forgotten. There is something else worth noticing about the story of Zacchaeus in this emotional climax. Jesus did not simply acknowledge him from a distance. He invited himself into his home. This detail matters more than it might first appear. In that culture, sharing a meal inside someone's home represented deep intimacy, acceptance, and honor. Jesus was not content with a brief, polite interaction beneath a tree. He wanted to enter Zacchaeus' actual living space, but to sit at his table, to remain present in the most personal parts of his daily life. This is exactly the kind of presence God desires with you as well. Not a distant, occasional visit reserved for Sunday mornings or moments of crisis, but a continual, intimate presence woven into the ordinary corners of your everyday life. Your kitchen table, your quiet mornings, your late-night worries, your small victories that no one else seems to notice. Chosen one. If there is one truth I want you to carry forward from this entire message, let it be this. You have never once been abandoned. Every lonely night, every overlooked effort, every unanswered prayer that felt like silence has actually been surrounded by a presence far more attentive than you ever realized. The same God who stopped beneath a sycamore tree to speak one name aloud is fully present with you right now in this very moment, calling you gently by name.